These adorable spindles are from Woodpecker Crafts, and I did get these on Amazon, but I believe you can also get these on their website. For this craft, I'm going to use 3 spindles and these eye hooks, and I'm using a pair of pliers, and this is how I install the eye hooks onto my spindles. I put the eye hook into my needle nose pliers there, and I'm going to hold that straight, and then twisting the spindle, I screw that into the eye hook. And this takes just a few minutes, and I'm able to do 3 of them real quickly to do this craft. And now that I have my 3 spindles ready, I am going to put these onto a paintable surface and grab out some Waverly chalk paint in the color white. And I made a huge mess here, so if it were me again and I was doing this, I would probably put on a pair of gloves because I got paint all over myself. But I'm just going to paint a nice coat of white paint over the tops and all around these spindles. Once I had all 3 of these painted, I thought that was a little bit too much paint, so I grabbed my baby wipes and I wiped them all down again. So they kind of look like they're whitewashed at this point, and you could totally stop here, but I was going to go a step further, of course. So I grabbed my Delta Creative Luxe Metal Silver and a little bit of the Luxe Metal White, and I'm going to mix those 2 colors together in a bowl. And these paints both have a shimmer to them, and I thought that these would look nice on our Christmas tree because I like to have a little bit of sparkle going on the tree, but this is not too much sparkle. And this was a little bit more silver than I wanted, so I did add a little bit more of that white, and I lightened it up a little bit. I'm going to take my brush and do a light coat over the top of all of these different spindles. Once those are dry, I did want to lighten it up a little bit, so I took my Delta Creative Luxe Metal White, and we're going to do a light dry brush over the entire spindle. Once all of these are coated and dried, I'm taking my Mod Podge gloss spray, and I'm going to just spray down each of these spindles to seal them in. Once all of these spindles are sealed, let's go ahead and add our hanger. I decided to use a sheer ribbon, and this sheer ribbon has like a silver grayish tint to it. So I'm going to add that to my eye hook, and I'll make a nice little loop and tie a knot at the top. Now we could stop there, but I thought it would be nice to add a little bow to each one of these. So I am going to hot glue a little bow using the same sheer ribbon to each one of these spindles. So now here's our trio set. These turned out adorable, and this craft is so easy to do. This is perfect for a fun little craft night with some friends. I love finding things that are ordinary and transforming them into Christmas. This home decor piece I found at Dollar Tree, and we're going to deconstruct it. And this is really easy to do. There's just a few staples on the back side, so I'm using a screwdriver and a pair of pliers, and I'm just pulling out those staples. And I'm going to save the twine and the beads to use in a later project, and we're just going to use these circles. Do want to remove the paper from the tops of these circles, so I'm using a little bit of water and some wet paper towels, and I'm just going to lay those over the top, and this will allow the paper to loosen up so it'll be easy to scrape off any of that excess paper. The tool that I'm using to scrape this off is just my Cricut scraper, but you could use like a paint scraper. That would work just as well. And once everything is removed, I do grab my zip sander, but a sanding block would work great. And I just sand the top off just to make sure I get any of that extra glue off of the round. So this craft was inspired by Sammy at Unicorn Dust and Design. She did this wonderful project using sheet music. And so I printed out some sheet music, Oh Holy Night, Christmas Tree, and Jingle Bells. What I did is I shrunk the image down a little bit because I wanted more of the notes to be on the small ornament here. And I just went ahead and I traced a circle around the title and some of that sheet music. And I'm going to cut these out. And now that we have all 3 of our sets of sheet music cut out, I'm taking these up to the kitchen and I'm using some Irish breakfast black tea from Trader Joe's. And I'm just going to brew up a small little container of this. And one of the things that I saw Sammy do for staining was using the actual tea bag to stain everything. And I've never done that before. Usually I just soak this in tea. So I thought that was a really cool idea. So I'm trying this out. And this worked fantastic. So thank you, Sammy, for this inspiration. Next, I'm going to go around each of these little circles and I'm just going to tear the edge. And with it wet from the tea, this makes it really easy. To assist in the dry time, I'm going to lay these out on a small cookie sheet and put these in the oven at 250 for about 10 minutes. Now let's go back to our little rounders. I'm taking some painter's tape and I'm just taping them down to a paintable surface. These are just small scrap pieces of cardboard. Once I have everything set up, I am going to take my Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster and give a nice coat of paint over the top layer of these rounders. And once that paint has dried, I grab my Mod Podge in matte and I'm doing a coat of Mod Podge over the top of the paint. Now once that Mod Podge is dry on all 3 of our rounders, I'm going to grab that sheet music that's out of the oven. And we'll start out with the one that says, "Oh Holy Night." And I am centering this on my rounder. And if you notice on these rounders from Dollar Tree, they have a little notch out of them at the top and the bottom. So I want that to be at the top of my ornament and the other one on the bottom of my ornament. And using a piece of parchment paper and a hot iron, I am just going to iron on these pieces of sheet music to our little rounders. Then we will repeat this step on our other 2 rounders. So I lay down the sheet music on top of the dried Mod Podge, and then I take a piece of parchment paper and layer that over the top. And using a hot iron or a heat press, you just iron that piece of paper down, and what this will do is allow the Mod Podge to adhere to the back side of that sheet music, and everything will stick down with no wrinkles. And then just remove that piece of parchment paper and save it for another time. And now that our rounders have the sheet music attached, I do take that same Mod Podge in matte and I'm going to do a coat of Mod Podge over the top of the sheet music to seal everything in. Now once our Mod Podge is completely dry, I'm taking some black multi-surface paint from Folk Art, and this is in satin. And I'm putting a little of that in a bowl, and using a very small brush, I'm going to do the outside rim or perimeter in black. And having these on that piece of cardboard makes it really easy to do that outside painting. And then while the paint is still wet, I'm taking a different brush, and this brush is completely dry. And I'm just going to go around the outside of the circle on the front side. And I'm just going in a downward motion and just feathering a little bit of distressing around the outside edge of these ornaments. Now, once everything is dry, let's go ahead and decorate the fronts of each of these ornaments. And I chose these songs specifically to decorate them differently. So, "Oh Holy Night," I'm taking a decal. And I cut this out on my Cricut Joy using a already made template inside Cricut Design Space. I'm just going to center this in my little round. And this is really similar to a sign that Sammy made over on Unicorn Dust and Designs in a much larger scale. Just to make sure nothing peels off, I did do another small coat of my Mod Podge and matte over the top of the decal. Now for the final step on this ornament, I am taking some 1/4-inch satin ribbon and I'm making what looks like a little fish, and I'm hot gluing that at the bottom where the tails are. And once that hot glue sets, I'm going to hot glue this on the back side of the ornament. And this allows for a beautiful loop hanger that looks high end but is really simple to do. And then we'll just hot glue that to the back and flip it over. Next, I'm going to put a little satin bow on here, and this is the same ribbon I used for the hanger. And I'm just trimming this up because it's a little bit bigger than what I would like. And I'm going to hot glue this to the top, but I want to make sure we can still see the words, "Oh Holy Night." So I'm just going to go really high up at the top there so we can see the title of our song. And our first ornament in our set is complete. I love how this turns out. It's just a classic look. It looks very high end, but was very easy to make. Now for our second ornament in this set, I am using a little wood star that I had in my stash. And I'm just going to tape this down to a paintable surface. And we'll use our multi-surface from Folk Art in black and paint this star on the front and around the perimeter. Now grabbing our Oh Christmas Tree ornament, I'm going to make that same loop where I take the 1/4 inch satin ribbon, I hot glue it at the bottom and make a little fish, and then I flip the ornament over, and then I'm going to hot glue the little X at the bottom of the fish onto the back of our ornament. It's time to decorate the front of this ornament, and I am using that little star we painted and a little pick, and I just cut this out of a pine pick that I had, and I shaped it in the shape of a Christmas tree. And using some hot glue, I just put that down at the bottom of our ornament. And while we have our hot glue out, I'm going to hot glue our little bow at the top of the ornament. Now for the star on top of the tree, I did not want to use hot glue because I am not that good with hot glue to get that into a thin line like that. So I'm taking my Elaine's tacky glue and I'm just going to paint the back of the star with the Elaine's tacky glue. And this will make it easier for me to place this on the top of our tree. And it does dry clear, so you don't need to worry about any excess there. And I just put that on the top of our little tree. And now here is our second ornament in our trio. I love how this turns out, and I love how you can just mix things up with the ornament a little bit just to give it its own individual flair. So for our last ornament in this set, I am going to do the same thing with that 1/4 inch ribbon, and we'll make that little fish, and we're going to hot glue that on the back for our hanger. Once that has dried, we can flip that over and we can decorate the front. And this one is Jingle Bells. So as you can guess, we are going to use some bells on the front of this. I did take a small piece of a pick from Christmas and I just hot glued that to the front. And I'm taking the bells and I'm going to hot glue that to the bottom so they look like little berries on the pick. Now, once those bells are attached, I hot glue the bow to the very top. And our third ornament in this set is complete. I just love how this turns out. I like all 3 of these ornaments. I'm not sure if I have a favorite, but I'd love to hear if you enjoyed these ornaments and if you have a favorite. So please leave a comment below on which one of these ornaments were your favorite. Oh Holy Night, Oh Christmas Tree, or Jingle Bells. Get ready to deck the halls with a fun and budget-friendly crafting project. In today's video, we'll show you how to turn ordinary wooden frames from the Dollar Tree into beautiful, one-of-a-kind ornaments. Perfect for adding a personal touch to your tree or gifting to loved ones. Hi, my name is Katie from Lady Red Crafting. Let's get creative and spread some Christmas cheer. So I was walking through the Dollar Tree and I found these wooden frames in the Crafter Square section. And I thought these would be perfect to make ornaments out of. So that is what we're going to do here. I'm starting out with one of these frames and a few popsicle sticks. And these popsicle sticks are the medium-sized popsicle sticks that you can find at the Dollar Tree. What I'm starting out doing here is I'm just going to cut one of the ends off and then I'm going to measure the popsicle stick to the inside of this frame. But I want about 1/4 of an inch on either side. So I'm going to take my straight edge here and I'll just measure that here so you guys can see that. this ends up being about 2.5 inches is what I'm going to need. So I'll just mark that on my popsicle stick, and then I'm able to actually get 2 slats out of each popsicle stick. And to fill in the frame completely, I needed 5 slats of those popsicle sticks. Once I had all of the popsicle sticks cut, I did take my zip sander, but a sanding block would work just fine. And I just sanded the edges off of those sticks. To cut the popsicle sticks, I actually ended up using just some outdoor clippers that I bought from the Dollar Tree. But scissors, if you have a heavy duty scissors, those work good, or you can score the popsicle sticks with a razor blade. And once everything is prepped, I took my antique wax from Waverly, and I'm just going to go ahead and stain all of these pieces. Now once everything is stained, and I did stain these on both sides, I'm going to take my wood glue and just attach these pieces to the back of this frame. And let's set that aside to dry for a few minutes. While that is drying, I did grab some satin ribbon. It's about 1/4 inch in width, and I cut a piece about 8 inches in length. Now I'm gonna make this into a shape of a fish, and then I'm gonna add a little bit of hot glue and glue this together. And this will be our little hanger for our ornament. And now that our wood piece has dried, I'm going to go ahead and tape this down to a paintable surface. And I'm using my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. And I'm going to do a dry brush on the front and on the back side of this ornament. Now once everything is painted, I am going to take that hanger we made, and I cut a little piece of fabric out. And I'm going to put that hanger on the back side of this ornament. So I'm just going to attach that with some hot glue. And then once that is glued on there, we're going to take a little bit of our tacky glue here, and this is Titebond tacky glue. And we're just going to go ahead and add that to the back side of the ornament. And I use a paintbrush on this because I don't want any lumpy parts. So I want it to be as smooth as possible. Then I just lay that piece of fabric right over the top of that glue. And this gives the back of our ornament a really nice finish. Next, I have this box of paper flowers that I had gotten on clearance, and I decided that I wanted to add one to the front of our little frame here. So I'm just going to hot glue that little flower right to the front. And to finish this off, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bow at the top. And now this simple little ornament is all ready to display. I just love how this turns out. I feel like you could add anything you want to the center of this frame and it would look amazing. Let me know what you guys would add to the center of this frame in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this content, don't forget to hit that like or subscribe button below. Thanks! I found these tags at the Dollar Tree and I love the little flip-flops on the top of them. So what I am going to do is I'm using my Cricut tool here and I'm just trying to pry these off without breaking them. And I wasn't getting very far with that Cricut tool, so I did grab a screwdriver and that gave me enough leverage to snap these off of the tags. And now that I have the flip-flops removed, I will save the tags for another craft, and we are going to take these flip-flops and transform them. Using a paintable surface, and I'm just taping them down to that piece of cardboard so they will be easier for me to paint. And I grab my multi-surface black acrylic paint, and this is in a satin finish, and I want to paint the bottom of our flip-flops the black. So these are the soles of the shoes. Once these are dry, I go ahead and flip them back over and tape them back down to our piece of cardboard. Grabbing my Waverly chalk paint in the color Maze, and I'm doing 2 coats of yellow paint over the top of our flip-flops. Now, while those are drying, I grab out some of this air dry clay and this cute mold that I have. And these are from Stampery. And I'm using the long piece here. So I'm just making a little snake, and then I'm going to press that clay down into the mold. And once I have everything pressed down, I just use my fingers to take any excess off. And I flip the mold over and pop that one out. And then I'm going to make a second one. Now that we have our 2 pieces of clay, I am taking my Elaine's tacky glue and I'm just going to draw out where I want my flip-flops. So I'm using my Cricut tool to cut the clay, but you could use a butter knife or just a regular paring knife or anything like that. I found that this clay is just really easy to work with. Now, once you're satisfied with your flip-flops and putting that clay on there, these will need to be set aside to dry for about 24 hours. So the next day, I took my Waverly chalk paint in the color white and a very skinny paintbrush, and I'm going to paint the clay with the white chalk paint. And I grabbed my heat tool just to help assist the drying process because I wanted to move on to the next step. I'm taking my Mod Podge in matte, and what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to paint the yellow portion of the flip-flops. Next, I'm going to take this piece of cardboard and place it on top of a piece of copy paper, and using some glitter that is in the color yellow, we're going to dust that over the top of the Mod Podge. And I have that piece of paper underneath me just to catch any excess, so we don't waste any of that fun glitter. To keep the glitter from just flaking off, I am going to seal this with glossy spray Mod Podge. Now here is what our adorable little flip-flops look like. Now you could hang these separately and make 2 ornaments, but I wanted to put these together. So I'm using some hot glue, and I am just going to hot glue them on the heel of the flip-flop to each other. Once those are attached, I flip this over and I'm using a pendant hanger, and I'll link these in my description box below. I did get them on Amazon in a big package. These things work great for adding hangers to different things. I've used them in jewelry making and in ornament making, and usually you can get like 200 of them for a very small price. And I'm just gonna glue that onto the back using my E6000, and that does take a little bit for it to adhere, so I do put a clip on there just to help maintain this pressure onto that piece. Now for some final touches. I am using black ribbon here, and this is satin ribbon as well, and it's about a 1/4 inch wide, and I'm just tying a little knot at the top there. And I thought it needed a little bit more, so I started pulling out different bows, and I wasn't liking anything I was finding. I tried different white ones and some checkered ones, so I decided on going with just a plain black bow. I thought that made it look a little bit elegant, and I'm just gonna hot glue that right underneath the hook there. And that's all there is to it. This adorable flip-flop ornament is ready to hang or give as a gift. I think these turned out amazing. They are one of my favorite ornaments that I've made to date. For this craft, we're starting out with one of those classic wood cutouts from the Dollar Tree. And this is just a cute little snowman. And I'm taping this down to a paintable surface. For this next step, you're going to need a hot glue gun. And I'm just going to fill the hole in at the top of that snowman and just add some little lines or designs to my snowman using the hot glue. Now let's grab our Aleene's tacky glue, and I'm just going to put a little bit of glue over the top of the snowman. And once I have a little bit of glue on top of the snowman here, I'm going to take a paintbrush and just paint that all over. Next, I'm going to grab some aluminum foil, and this is just the regular aluminum foil. And I'm going to tear a piece off big enough to cover my snowman. I'm just going to lightly press that aluminum foil into all the nicks and crannies. Now I grabbed a paintbrush with no paint on it, just a dry paintbrush, and I'm just going to paint the aluminum foil onto my snowman. Now, once that is completely dried, I grab my Delta Creative white metallic paint, and I'm just going to do a nice coat of paint over the top of the foil. Now, once that is dry, I grab my multi-surface folk art licorice paint, and I'm going to paint the hat on our snowman. And for our carrot nose, I am going to use my Delta Creative metallic gold paint, and I'm going to paint the nose. Now to seal all of this paint in, I'm using my hard coat Mod Podge, and I'm just going to do a light coat over the top of all the paint. And now once everything is nice and dry, I grabbed my zip sander and I'm going to sand off the excess aluminum foil here. Now, if you don't want to use a zip sander, that is totally fine. A little piece of sandpaper will work. But I've also found that an emery board, especially on detail work like this, works really nice. So just the nail file, and you just go ahead and you just do the same motion in a downward motion and sand off the foil. Moving on to the next step. I found this hanger at the Dollar Tree, and I am going to transform these into some ornaments. So the first thing I want to do is I want to deconstruct this sign. So I'm just using a pair of pliers and a screwdriver to remove the staples off the back side of this sign. Now we're going to go ahead and just take a little bit of water, and I'm going to spray the tops of these signs and put a piece of paper towel over the top to let it all soak in. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a scraping tool and scrape off as much of it that I can. I don't need to scrape all of it off because I am going to be covering it with another material, but I wanted to scrape off enough that the glue would stick nicely and not fall off. And the material we're going to glue onto these ornaments is this sparkly little placemat I found at the Dollar Tree, and I absolutely love crafting with it. It is amazing. I'm just going to take one of these squares and I'm going to place it on the back side of this placemat, and I want to get the most out of it that I can, so I'm going to put it in a spot where I feel like I can get more pieces cut out. And then I'm just going to trace around the outside and then cut a piece out. And once I get this piece cut out, I do a fit check with my little ornament piece and make sure everything is going to fit nice. Now let's take our square, and I'm going to tape this down to a paintable surface, and we're going to flip this over to where the smooth side is, which would have been the back side of this sign. And I'm taking a little bit of this black satin paint, and I'm just going to coat the back side of this ornament. I am also going to paint around the perimeter of the ornament as well. Next, I grabbed a piece of satin ribbon, and I'm going to measure out a piece about 10 inches in length. And this is a 1/4 inch thick satin ribbon. I'm going to take this ribbon and I'm going to make it into a shape of a fish. And if you see me made ornaments before, this is one of my standard moves for making a hanger. Next, I go ahead and add a little bit of hot glue, and I'm just going to make sure that that adheres to each other. This allows for the hanger to sit flat against your ornament and leaves a nice hanging look when you hang this on your tree. Now I'm just going to glue this to the back corner of the square on the black side of the square. And once that glue has dried, we'll flip this over and we'll go ahead and start decorating the front side of our ornament. Next, we're going to grab our tight bond glue, and I'm just going to add that to the top of my ornament, and I'm going to use a paintbrush to paint that glue onto the top of the ornament. This will allow for the piece of the placemat that we're going to put over the top of it to not have any lumps when we put that down. And I'll just lay that piece of placemat over the top of the glue. And I'm loving how this is turning out. You have that nice black on the back side of the ornament, but then you have this really sparkly part on the front. And it just really makes it look like a polished ornament, something that you might buy at a high-end store. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab that tight bond again and our cute little snowman. And we're going to take a little bit of that tight bond glue, add that to the back of our snowman. And of course, I'm going to use that paintbrush again and paint that glue right onto the snowman so that he is covered completely. Then we're just going to center that snowman right to the front of our ornament. And wow, I just love how this ornament turns out. This looks so high-end and doesn't look like you made it from Dollar Tree items. Let me know what you think in the comments below. For this craft, we're starting out with some wood frames from the Dollar Tree, some paper flowers, and I have a piece of lace that I had gotten at a thrift store, and I've just been cutting pieces off of it for different projects. So I'm starting out by just taping 2 of these wood frames. There's 4 in one pack, but we're just going to use 2 for this project. And I'm taping it down to a paintable surface. And using my Delta Creative Gold paint, I'm going to go ahead and paint both of these frames. And once our frames are dry, I'm going to grab out that lace, and I'm just going to take one of these frames and lay it over the top of the lace. Once I find a good spot to cut out, I'll cut out some of that lace. Now taking my wood glue, and this wood glue is from the Dollar Tree, and I have had no problems using it. It has worked amazing. So don't be afraid to try it if you haven't tried it yet. So I'm just going to take this wood glue and I'm just going to spread it around on the back side of one of these frames. And I add just a little bit of hot glue as well. Next, I'm just going to lay down the lace over the top of that glue, and I sandwich that between the 2 different frames. Now, if I would have been smart, I would have added the hanger while I had the frames taken apart, but I forgot to do that. So I ended up prying this open and adding my little hanger in between the 2 frames. At least the glue hadn't set yet, so I was able to do that, but I recommend doing that when you're doing the lace if you're doing this project. Now, once I have that hanger attached to our frame, I'm going to go ahead and grab these paper flowers that I got on clearance, and I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of that Titebond glue to the center of that flower, and we're going to add that to our lace. And that's all there is to it. This adorable ornament is ready to hang and display. I'm really loving the pink and the gold for Christmas. What do you think? Do you think pink can be a Christmas color? Let me know in the comments below. So this is a fun ornament to make, and you can make it 2 different ways, so I'm going to show you both ways. So I'm starting out with this wood frame from the Dollar Tree and some of those wood cutout trees. And these work really well with this frame. Next, I'm going to take my Waverly Antique Wax and stain both of these frames. Now, while that is drying, I have these 2 little star-shaped brads that I'm going to take some gold paint and paint both of these stars gold. Now for the Christmas trees. I am going to tape them down to a paintable surface, and I'm going to paint both sides of the tree with Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. And I'm going to do this for both of my trees because I'm making 2 different ornaments. Now, starting with our first tree, I grabbed some of my matte Mod Podge, and I'm just going to paint a coat of the Mod Podge over the top of the tree. Now, once that Mod Podge has completely dried, I'm taking some of this tissue paper, and this tissue paper I did get at Walmart. I'm just going to lay that over the top of the tree, and then I'll put a piece of parchment paper down, and I'm going to iron this tissue paper right onto the tree. I went ahead and used my zip sander and sanded the extra tissue paper right off of the tree. And if you don't have a zip sander, that is perfectly fine. Sandpaper, an emery board, or sanding block would work just fine. Then go ahead and flip that Christmas tree over and repeat the exact same steps. So now you'll have 2 different trees, one that has decoupaged on both sides and one that just has paint on both sides. Next, I grabbed some ribbon to make some hangers, and this ribbon is satin ribbon, and it's about 1/4 of an inch thick, and I'm cutting them at 8 inches in length. Once these are cut, I am going to make them into a shape of a fish, and using my hot glue, I'll just hot glue those little tails together. Going back to those stars we painted earlier, I'm taking some wire cutters and I'm just going to trim off the end of the brad, so all we're left with is the star. Let's go ahead and put together our first ornament. I'll grab one of the frames, one of the stars, one of the hangers, and one of the trees. And this one is the painted tree. And I actually also made another little bow with that same ribbon that I used for the hanger. Now next, using some hot glue, I'm just going to hot glue the hanger right to the top of this frame where that point is. Now let's go ahead and add a little bit of hot glue on top of where we hot glued the hanger, and then a hot glue to the bottom of the frame. And this is where we're going to put the tree. And this is actually going to be kind of the back side of the ornament, but both sides are going to look beautiful. Now let's hot glue that gold star right to the top of our tree. Once that's in place, we're going to flip this frame over. And this is what I really like, because I wanted this to be the front side of my ornament, and it looks like you're looking into a window where there's a Christmas tree. All we're going to do to this front side is add a quick bow to the top of our tree. And now our first ornament is complete. Let's go ahead and repeat the same steps on the second ornament. And now that we have our final bow added to this ornament, both of our ornaments are complete. So which one do you like better? Do you like the first one that's painted? Or do you like the second one that's decoupage? Drop me a comment down below on which one you prefer, 1 or 2. For this ornament, we're starting out with a shower curtain ring, and you can get a bunch of these at the Dollar Tree. I believe it's 12 in a pack for $1.25, so you can get quite a few ornaments out of it. Now let's grab some macrame rope and some twine. And what I'm doing here is just cutting them into nice little strips in 6-inch lengths. Now grab your hot glue gun and take the shower curtain ring and make sure it's locked into place, and then just seal it with a little bit of hot glue. We just want to make sure that this doesn't pop open on us while we're making our fun ornament here. Now I'm just going to take the twine and the macrame rope, and I'm just going to loop it up and around the ornament here, and we're just going to make almost like a big old sunshine. So we're just going white macrame rope, and then we're going to do twine, and then the white, and then the twine. A quick note here, I'm not going to go the full length around the ring. We're just going to go all the way around, and we're just going to skip where it's hooked together. We're going to cover that up later on, and so you'll see that it's almost like a really tight U, and we're not going to cover up that one little spot. All the string tight and in place, I'm going to grab my hot glue gun and just put a tiny bit of hot glue at the edges here, just so that it doesn't move around too much. So once that hot glue dries, we'll grab some Mod Podge and matte, and we'll just do a light coat all the way around the ring of the ornament. So we'll set that aside to dry. And now let's go ahead and grab some stars. And these are just some fun wood cutouts that I got from the Dollar Tree last year, but you can usually find them at the craft store as well. And I'm using my Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm just gonna coat them so that we can go ahead and wipe off some of that wax, and it's gonna give it a stained look. And then what I'll do next is we're gonna grab some of our Waverly white chalk paint. And then we're gonna do a little whitewash over the top of these. While we're painting the stars, I just wanted to share how much I love Christmas time. One of the favorite things I like to do at Christmas is watch Christmas movies and make crafts. What is something you like to do at Christmas? So once all the paint dries, I'm gonna grab some Rub and Buff, and I'm just gonna put a little bit down on the piece of cardboard here, and I'll grab a small rag, and it's a lint-free rag, and I'm just gonna use it with a dab of the Rub and Buff, and we're just going to just slightly rub over the top of the star on both sides. Now let's set those stars aside to dry. I'm going to go back to the ornament, and we're just gonna go ahead and untwist all of the strings, and it's gonna kind of give it a more of a lion look. And this step does require a little bit of patience. It takes a while to untwist all of those little strings. And there is a little bit of fuzz that will come out, so be prepared to have to vacuum up some of that fuzz, especially from those twines. But once you're done, it's gonna look so amazing. Next, I'm gonna put this down on the flat surface, and I'm using just a comb, and we're just gonna comb all of that string out, and this gets rid of any of the extra fuzz and gives it a nice smooth look. Once you're satisfied with combing out the strings, go ahead and grab a nice pair of sharp scissors, and we're just going to give it a little bit of a haircut and trim all the way around. And I always start a little longer than what I want, and then I take the scissors and I come back and I just try to even it up. When you're satisfied with the look of your ornament, go ahead and grab some small twine or string, and we're gonna make a loop for hanging our ornament up at the top where the hook of the ring was. And I'm just going to tie a simple knot on both ends, one closer to the ornament and then one up at the top, so that it will hang nice when we put that on our tree. Let's decorate the top of our wreath. I grabbed some picks that I had from last year, and one of these picks is from the Dollar Tree, the gold one, and the greenery was from Walmart, and it has a little bit of a sparkle in it. And I'm going to use a little bit of both, and I'm mixing gold and silver with my tree this year, so this is kind of new for me. I'm not a big gold person, but we're gonna add gold. So the greenery has a little bit of silver sparkles in it, and we're just gonna glue that on as a swag. And then I'll add the little pieces of gold to the top of the swag. Then we'll add a star right in the center, and that will cover up that ring where it connects so you won't even see it. To ensure that the star really stays in place, I suggest holding the star in place with the hot glue until it's totally set. It does take a few minutes, but I feel like it does give it a little bit of a better hold. I love how this ornament turned out. It's so elegant. It's all ready to go and hang on your tree.